I got to mention this, though. This was the other big talking point from the past week. Tony Khan's Twitter meltdown. Now, just to give some background here, on Monday during Raw, when Jinder Mahal, which I'll also get to, was announced as the number one contender to the World Heavyweight Championship next week on Raw against Seth Rollins, Raj Giri, formerly of Wrestling Inc., had tweeted a picture of the two and said, oh, these two have history from NXT. For whatever reason, I don't know why, the USA Network Twitter account responded and said, well, what did that match from NXT in 2012 get on Cage Match? And he was referring to what Tony Khan said on that press conference call a few weeks ago before World's End, when he was talking about how the recent shows of Dynamite have scored the highest ratings ever for any AEW show on Cage Match, which is where wrestling fans, it seems like Rotten Tomatoes for wrestling fans for these shows, where they can rate shows. And I've never really used it myself personally, but I guess it's been around for a long time. And wrestling fans review the shows, give their thoughts on it, and give them a rating from like 1 to 10 type of thing. So USA Network kind of got a subtle shot in there on Tony Khan. He responds, not really taking a shot at them, or like, what can you really say about a faceless person behind a Twitter account, like some intern that works at USA Network. But Tony Khan quote tweeted it, saw this the following day, and I can't really say go off, that might be being a bit dramatic, but he was mentioning how, oh, well, you're basically, in so many words, well, your number one contender to the World Heavyweight Championship hasn't won a televised match in the last 2 years, which is true. And just kind of talking about that, whereas with Hook, people were complaining about him because he called out Samoa Joe for a title shot, which some people did have an issue with, and I don't really care one way or the other. But he is 28-1. He called out Joe for a title shot next week on Dynamite. Tony Khan said, outrage. But when Jinder Mahal gets a title shot, no outrage. I don't know what part of Twitter he's on. I know there's a lot of people flooding his mentions, shitting on AEW, and sometimes justifiably so, but a lot of the time, people who just don't like AEW will flood his mentions just saying you're the worst, this is awful, that everything you do is the worst. I feel like he gets clouded by those people's judgment, thinking that's what everyone else is thinking, when that is the farthest thing from the truth. Anyone with any sensible logic on wrestling may have an issue with the Hook stuff, but they would definitely have an issue with the Jinder Mahal stuff. I mean, I definitely had an issue with the Jinder Mahal stuff, and we'll get to that. But Tony Khan responding the way that he did, one, not even being accurate, and two, the fact that he commented at all, getting himself in more deep water for shit that he says on Twitter, is just, to say the very least, a very bad look. So what was your assessment of the situation?
So, as normal, I was just on Twitter, see it come up. I'm like, this has to be the
This is how I found out about it, by the way, through you. You were the one that told me about it.
So usually I feel like I see an account that's there's like a parody account, and it has like the same picture that he uses for his normal account. Yeah. So I see the tweet, I'm like, this has to be a parody account. Go over to it. Nope, this is the real deal. And I'm like, why? I just don't understand that. And people like, I don't understand why fans can be upset, but he can't. It's like, dude, he's the owner of the company. That's like another owner of like a sports team agreeing with someone else to be like, well, actually, this player sucks. Like, they would never do that.
Yeah.
Because it makes no freaking sense. And it's just, I just don't get Tony. He's a nice guy, but just, they talk about Bryan Danielson finding people for their Twitter use and stuff. They need to find Tony Khan because, Jesus Crow, the stuff that he tweets out, whew. I mean, they need to take his phone away. I just really don't get it. I mean, it was like you said, a nameless person behind the USA Network's like Twitter account. I mean, I condemn them. They're a nice smart ass. I thought the comment was hilarious, but
yeah.
I just feel like him going off like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah, it was just questionable. I mean, this is not the first time this has happened. It's far from the first time. This is a recurring pattern with this guy. The bottom line is the guy's just got to lock off of social media. I just don't think he can take it. And I'm not calling him like, oh, he's soft or anything. I'm just saying, not that he can't take criticism, but like he goes off at the dumbest things. Like he went off, he was clearly bothered by the cage match comment, even though it was funny. And what's funny about the cage match comment, the Twitter account, the USA Network Twitter account didn't mention this, but Tony Khan was boasting about cage match and how he uses that as a like fucking Bible for how great of his shows are. And it seems like if you look at his likes on Twitter, he only really looks at the positive feedback that his shows get, even when they're not the greatest. And I enjoyed Dynamite on Wednesday. I thought it was a good show. We'll get to that shortly. But, when it comes to negative criticism, he gets bothered by it. And any normal person would be, and I get it. But some of the stuff that he's saying just isn't even true. The Jinder stuff is true. What I'm saying is, what he said on Twitter the other day was not incorrect. He was 1,000% correct. But like the way he seemingly like flips out about it, it's just unbefitting and uncharacteristic, I think, of a CEO of a company. It's just not a good look, because anyone who says, oh, it's funny, I mean, I don't really see why people are making a big deal out of it. He can tweet whatever he wants. It's his company. You said it yourself, dude. You don't see many other executives doing this. And obviously, WWE has had their own issues. They're fucking petty. Vince McMahon was a sex pest, obviously. They have their own problems. But like as far as this sort of stuff goes, you don't really see them doing this sort of stuff. I know they did it in the Attitude Era. Eric Bischoff gave away the results to Raw. I think that's dumb too. That was also just a different time. There's no reason to recreate that. And I think anyone saying, oh, you want to recreate the Attitude Era, but you don't want this sort of stuff. I don't want any of that stuff. Leave that stuff in 99. I don't want that bullshit. I think it's just a bad look for the company, because again, anyone saying, oh, it's funny, I don't know why people are so concerned about it. I don't work there myself, but I do know for a fact there are people that work there in that company that see this activity from their boss and think, this is embarrassing. It's a bad look for us because it makes everyone else on the roster look Bush League. That he's talking about booking stuff. He's talking about booking crap. About, oh, Jinder hasn't won matches in 2 years. It's all fake. Like, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, I know I'm complaining about it, but we're assessing the product. And I know he is as well. But he's the executive of the other company. Like, that doesn't even make the slightest bit of sense. Imagine if I brought up this sort of logic to Triple H and compared it to AEW during a press scrum. He'd be laughed out of the room. Like, they don't give a fuck. I don't know. I could see why he gets so bothered by it, but I just feel like he should stop once in a while, because it's just not a good look for the product. And he's guilty of the stuff that he complains about, too. I mean, I said this on Twitter, and we'll get to it a little bit later on. Sting and Darby, how have they not gone a tag team title shot? They're 26-0. I mean, Abaddon, I know she won a number one contenders match. She got 2 title matches. She faced Julia Hart at World's End, I know. But she faced Hikaru Shida before that on a collision that I was at, actually, in Connecticut a couple months ago. She became number one contender the night before after not being on TV for a year or two. A year or two! I mean, where was the criticism there? You know what I mean? So, he just needs to stop once in a while, because I feel like in the long term, again, you got to think bigger picture here. It's just a really bad look for the company, and it causes people to kind of lose that goodwill with the company, because they just think they look Bush League compared to WWE.
No, I completely agree. I think he just needs to get off Twitter. And like you said, it's not like, what was said wasn't like that big of a deal. Like I said, it was just a small little joke, and he just took it too far. And I mean, the whole thing of him saying like that he basically books off cage match, like, dude, it's a fucking website for marks. Like, oh, I take it real serious. Like, dude, it's people. Like, it's not like the New York Post or something.
Yeah.
It's like a forum for wrestling fans. Like, I don't know. I feel like he's one of those people that thinks he can dish it but can never take a small amount of criticism. And he doesn't even take criticism because he always says everything's great anyway. So he's never admitted that anything wasn't good. Everything's always great. You ask him questions, he just talks about the ratings and how great everyone is. So the more I hear him talk, the more I just don't care for him at all, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just hard to... And again, like you said, he seems like a really nice guy. He's passionate about the product. I'm glad there was a fan actually running a wrestling company. It's refreshing, but it kind of goes too far down the rabbit hole when it comes to stuff like this that just doesn't matter. And again, there's no issue with going back and forth with, like, subtle, funny jabs, but, like, his response just seems so, one, unnecessary, and the stuff that he was talking about, it looked like he was stretching to find something to complain about, is what I'm saying here. Like, it seemed like he was really going out of his way to find something about the other product that he could complain about. So he watched Raw on Monday or saw people tweeting about whatever on Monday, and he was like, oh, Jinder Mahal's their number one contender? Let's talk about that and compare it to Hook. I mean, it brought... I don't care for Jinder at all. And Jinder kind of getting... Jinder's response was really funny, saying, who the fuck is Hook? And then saying, watch Raw Mondays at 8, because Tony Khan ends every tweet with that. I thought that was amazing. That might have been enough to make me a Jinder Mahal fan, if only for a little bit. Not enough for me to want to see him become World Heavyweight Champion on Monday, which we'll get to momentarily. But I thought that was pretty funny. Not even the fact that he said, who the fuck is Hook? He said at the end of it, watch Raw Mondays at 8. Because Tony ended his initial tweet about the Hook thing and Jinder, saying, watch Dynamite at 8 p.m. on Wednesdays. Like, what? Like, he did the same thing when he let go of Big Swole a few years ago. Again, this is far from the first instance that something like this has happened, where he didn't even need to publicly comment on it, but he did. And it was like, watch Rampage this Friday at 8. Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, it's not a good look. And I don't know. If you don't think it's a big deal, that's your prerogative. But I just think it's a bad look for the company, and I think it's a step backward for their CEO to be going on Twitter and complaining about wins and losses where he himself is guilty of the same thing he's complaining about. So it just doesn't make much sense to me. Speaking of Jinder Mahal, though, we got to get into it on that same subject. On Monday, he did confront Seth Rollins, 1 week removed from facing off with Rollins, or rather The Rock, in Rock's return to Raw. He comes out to confront Rollins and demands an opportunity at the World Heavyweight Championship. I couldn't even tell you what they talked about on Monday. I just could not care about this at all. It was a fine segment. They set up a match, but that will be for the World Heavyweight Championship next Monday on Raw. I mean, it's not really the issue of, like, Rollins needs an opponent for the Rumble. If Rollins isn't at the Rumble, that's not really my problem. But, I mean, again, for everyone that's siding with Jinder in this whole Tony Khan thing, ironically saying that he should win the World Championship on Monday, those people need to stop, because I'm hoping that does not become a reality just because Jinder has all this buzz right now that they put the championship on him. That would be incredibly stupid. Jinder is mediocre as hell. That WWE title reign was one of the worst I've ever seen in the history of that championship. But just the pure idea of Jinder getting a world title opportunity, if they were to do the match, that's one thing, but they're making it for the championship. The guy hasn't won a match in years on television, as Tony Khan mentioned. I mean, WWE isn't out of the woods here either. That was also pretty embarrassing on Monday night, but that's just my 2 cents. What about you?
Don't hinder Jinder, put the belt on him.
Oh my God, you're one of those people?
I'm not going that far, but no, I think that, well, I'm assuming what will happen. It'll be him and Jinder on Raw. There'll be some kind of interference with, like, Indus-Sher. They'll do the rematch at Royal Rumble. Someone easy for Rollins to beat. 1, 2, 3, move on. I mean, I'm not really, like, into, like, yeah, should he be getting a title match? No. But do I think he's going to win? No. Should he win? No. But, I mean, I think it's something to keep Rollins busy in the interim. And, I mean, hey, his segment with The Rock had more ratings and had more viewers than Dynamite has in, like, 3 weeks combined. So, I mean, Jinder's a draw. It is what it is.
Here's my problem with it. I feel like the Raw roster has so many people you could pair him up with right now, that you could pair Rollins up right now. But one name that comes to mind, unless they're doing an Elimination Chamber, which I don't think they are, and I could be wrong, is Bronson Reed. I mean, Bronson Reed is doing nothing right now. I know he confronted Jey Uso on Raw. Cool. Finally gets to step up in competition. That could be a good match. I don't know if they're doing it on Monday's Raw or another time. I don't know. But Bronson Reed was right there. He's been directionless for a year now. And I know people are going to say, oh, but if they did Reed, then you would complain that he lost in 2 weeks. I mean, not necessarily. It's better than doing nothing. It's better than him being on fucking main event facing Javier Bernal from NXT. Like, I don't know. I mean, there's so many people on that Raw roster that I feel like could have worked better than Jinder Mahal is my point. I know Jinder's coming off the segment with The Rock, and I know he has some momentum there, and people are talking about Jinder. I mean, this was before the whole Tony Khan thing, so it's not like that happened and they put him in the ring with Rollins because he was trending. Gunther you weren't going to do. That should be saved for another time. But, like, you may not agree, but even someone like a Ricochet, I would rather see in there than Rollins. Just because he's won more matches, he's been more relevant in the past year than Jinder Mahal. Even like a Chad Gable, dude. I mean, there were other options. Or, like, Dominic, maybe? I don't know. There were other options than doing for the not for the millionth time, but putting Jinder in there. I just feel like that just doesn't make much sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you said Bronson Reed, I wouldn't be against that, but I also think it's one of those things they probably don't want him losing. I mean, he's only lost one singles match in the last couple of months, and that was to Gunther for the title. So, I mean, that makes sense to a point. Like I said, maybe they're waiting to do that at Elimination Chamber. But, I mean, like I said, I don't really have a big deal with it because I don't think he's going to win. And like I said, I'd rather hold off on Bronson. I mean, I think he's going to lose in the end anyway, so I guess you're just kind of delaying the inevitable. But obviously that shows in Australia where he's from, so maybe it props up a little bit more. But like I said, if I thought there was a chance Jinder was going to win, I'd say this is fucking stupid. But I don't think there's any chance he wins. So to me, it's just like, why build up Jinder on TV just to lose a Raw? It's like they used to build all these heels up just to lose. Like, they don't even have to build him up. We already know he's going to lose.
I mean, why even bother building up anyone? Jinder can get a championship shot out of nowhere, so what's the point?
Yeah, Jey Uso got a title shot, and he hasn't won a match on TV in like 4 months.
Yeah, correct. That was also problematic. that is very true, but at least he's over, though.
Okay, but it's the same concept.
No, I agree. It's the same thing. I think they need to build these people up better. WWE has an issue with that, where these people. I mean, at least The Miz, for example, the guy hadn't won in ages, but at least when he got his title shot, he also won a number one contenders match. The same way Abaddon got a title shot by winning a number one contenders match. At least Miz was on TV, Abaddon was not, but it's different. That's a different conversation. But I guess, again, it just doesn't check a lot of boxes for me, because I feel like if there were other people on the Raw roster you could have put in the ring with Rollins that would have made for a better feud, mini feud, and a better match, I would have just done that. Because I just feel like the feud isn't interesting, the Mahal character isn't interesting, the match won't be interesting. At least if you put one of the other people on there that are also equally as big of losers as Jinder is, I mean, probably a little less so, like Ricochet. The guy's he's a jobber. I mean, he's not a jobber, but like, he hasn't been on the show in weeks, doesn't win a lot of matches that matter. I get it. But he also went in there and had a really good match with Logan Paul at SummerSlam last year, and he's been on TV enough where I would rather see him and Rollins for the first time one-on-one and then like an attraction to the Rumble. You know Ricochet's not winning. We know Jinder's probably not winning either, obviously. But I'd rather see that than... and it's not like an agenda towards Jinder. I just don't think he's that good. Like, we've been down this road with Jinder before, and it's never, ever worked. And it's not going to work in 2024 either. He gets heat. Cool. When the bell rings, people fall asleep. I was there when he faced Drew at SummerSlam. No one cared a couple of years ago. I don't know. I just feel like there were better options than him. It's not the end of the world, but I just saw that on Monday, and I'm not just coming on here to shit on Tony Khan like, oh, his logic is, he's wrong. No, he's right, but I had wished they had done a better challenger, I guess, than Jinder Mahal, because there were better options in my opinion. But I'm ready to go to sleep when that match starts on Monday, because I'm sure it's going to be an all-out banger. I'm sure they're just going to go out there and have an amazing match. I can almost guarantee it. But
he's so negative.
I know. It sounds like I absolutely hate the dude, and it's the same thing. I mean, I don't think Tony Khan doesn't like Jinder Mahal. I think he just has an issue with his booking, as do I. I mean, I don't care for Jinder at all. I'm sure the guy's a decent guy, but they've made him out. I mean, I know that's a cop-out answer, but he's just boring. He's not interesting. The matches suck. I mean, does anyone actually care about his title reign from 7 years ago? That was absolutely awful and dragged SmackDown into a fucking hole that it took forever to get out of. I mean, facts are facts.